Hey BookTube, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Ginger, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys my July wrap-up. So in July I ended up reading a total of 8 books, which is pretty good for me considering I only read 1 in June, which I will be talking about today since I only read 1 obviously, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it before. So before we get into talking about the books a little bit, I'm just going to do my stats, and because I think that that's really cool, and you guys might not think that it's cool, so if not, just go ahead and skip ahead to the book talk, but I'm just going to do that really quick here. So I read a total of 2,878 pages in the month of July, which makes about 92.2-ish to 93 pages a day, which isn't the best, but considering how busy I have been this summer, I'm okay with that. I read a total of 5 thrillers, 1 romance, 1 YA, and then I'm gonna go with 1 contemporary because I'm not really sure what to fit the one book category into, or book into a category, I don't know. So I'm gonna go with contemporary because that covers a lot, right? And then the book that I read in June was also a thriller, so I guess 6 thrillers total that I'm going to be talking about today. If you can't tell, thrillers are my favorite. This is my thriller shelf, and I got, like 8 more thrillers, so I'm going to have to eventually redo my bookshelves and put those in there. As for authors, almost all but 1 of the books were written by a woman, which I did not plan that. If you guys continue to watch up into my TBR for August, you'll see that I have a TBR jar, and I just so happened to pick all female authors for that, so whoops. And then for my average star rating, I had an average of 4.1 stars with 1 5-star rating, 4 4-star, 1 3.5, and 3 3-star ratings. And then also the book from June was a 3-star rating as well. So without further ado, I'm going to get into talking to the books, and I'm going to start with the June book and go in order of the books and the order I read them. So yeah, let's get into those. So the book that I did read in June, I read while we were on vacation, driving around, and that book was The Good Girl by Mary Kubica. I hope I'm saying that right. I heard really, really good things about this, and that it was a really good thriller, and any more takes a lot for me to be like, yeah, 5-star thriller. So I was like, well, if I've heard good things about this, I'm sure it's good. And I ended up giving it 3 stars. I thought it was just average. The plot twists were kind of, I knew that they were coming. It did have me feeling for the main character at the end of the book, and it gave me similar vibes to Stolen, if anyone's read that book. I forget who it's freaking written by, but if I remember, I'll put it in the comments and link it below. But it's not really, that one was a YA, but this one, I think because of having the high expectations for it, and it just being like a meh, like an okay thriller, that's why I gave this a 3 stars. And there were just some, from what I remember, like I said, I read this in June, there were just some things about it that I was like, not really necessary, or I didn't really like. But this is pretty much about a girl who goes missing, and they're trying to figure out what happened to her, and all that kind of good stuff. So if you like that trope and you haven't read as many thrillers as me, or you just like thrillers no matter what, then I'd still give this one a recommendation for you to read. But for me, it was just okay. And I have Don't You Cry by her on my TBR, so hopefully if I get around to that one, I might like that one better. Who knows? And then the first book that I read in July, we're going to get into my July books now, was the YA book on my list, and that is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. And I've heard wonderful things about this, and I was definitely not disappointed when I read it. I flew through it really quickly. I read it in just an evening at work. This is about a girl who was born with wings, and pretty much discusses her family, starting with her grandma to her mother to her, and it was wonderfully written, and definitely Leslie Walton is a wonderful writer, and I'd love to read her newest book, The Price of the Occult, I think is what it's called, but I was hesitant again with this one because I've heard great things about it, but it definitely was a very good read, and I'm glad that I picked it up, and I have it on my shelves. I did give this 4 stars. What really made it not a 5-star book for me was the ending. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I just had so many questions, and for me, it didn't wrap up and give me a lot of closure. So when books do that, I kind of get a little angry, and I'm like, well, that didn't just end well for me. So that would be the main reason I did not give this a 5 stars, but definitely I would recommend it if you're looking for just a whimsical story that is beautifully written, because I'm definitely someone who looks for beautiful writing, and this has that. The next book I read was another one of my thrillers, and it was sent to me for advanced reading, even though it came to me the day after it came out. Whoops to the publishing company, but I still am very grateful that they sent it to me, and that is Bring Me Back by B.A. Paris. This was my first B.A. Paris novel. I now own her other 2. I did like the writing, but this particular thriller I was not super impressed with. It's a very short book, and just because I didn't like the twist and whatever doesn't mean that you won't, because everyone's different, and the twist definitely was surprising, but I didn't like it personally. So I did give this book 3 stars. This is about a man whose girlfriend disappears, and this is happening 12 years later. He's about to be remarried, and suddenly signs of his ex-girlfriend are starting to come up, and he's wondering if maybe she's still out there. I've heard that her book, The Breakdown, is really good, and for my book club this month we are reading Behind Closed Doors by her as well, so I'm going to see if I like her books better, because obviously she's a very well-known thriller writer. But yeah, this one was 3 stars for me, and it was just okay. It was an okay thriller. Like I said, it still surprised me, but I just wasn't entirely impressed. The next book that I read was, I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, but it's probably more of a 4.5, and that is Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I have read Gone Girl, and it was good, but obviously I think it's a little overhyped. But Dark Places is, it was such a good read. It made me really think about just people in general, and uncovering the mystery of what happened to Libby Day's family was a wonderful ride to go on. So as I said, this is about a girl named Libby Day who, when she was younger, her whole family was murdered, and her brother was convicted of murdering them. And this is her years later, and suddenly she's wondering maybe her brother didn't actually do it, and what might have happened to her family. And it's pretty much just, I would say it's more of a mystery than a thriller, but it is definitely such a good read, and just, I'm so glad that I picked this up. And I do want to pick up Sharp Objects as well, because I've seen that around, and I'm not really planning on watching the HBO movie or whatever. I don't know if it's a movie or a show, but I've read 2 out of 3 of her books so far, so I kind of want to read them all, because I really like this one, and I liked Gone Girl, but like I said, I think it's just a little overhyped, and there's a lot of things that have been done like it. But yeah, this one's definitely unique, and I would totally recommend you picking it up and reading it. The next book that I read, I thought was a thriller going into it, and it was not. But that does not mean I did not enjoy it all the same, and that is The Stolen Marriage by Diane Chamberlain. I had gotten this for advanced reader copy, or to read before it was published, back in 2017, so whoops to me. But I finally did get around to reading it, and I did give it a 3, but The reason that I gave it a 3 was because, for one, it wasn't really what I was expecting, and for two, it was a little slow getting into it at parts. But this is about a girl who she's engaged to the love of her life, and she ends up accidentally, I don't want to say accidentally, but she ends up sleeping with a guy and getting pregnant, and she doesn't even know him, and it's kind of about what happens after that, what she has to do to make the best out of her life, and just kind of just her story of understanding things and living with her mistakes. It was definitely interesting. It would be, I guess, historical fiction as well, because it takes place back in the 50s or 60s, when race is still an issue, and this happens in the South, so that is a prominent issue, obviously, why I would bring it up. But yeah, there were definitely some points in here that I was not expecting. I was genuinely surprised. I felt for our main character. I don't remember her name. Tess. Her name is Tess. But there were parts that I felt I wasn't expecting in a bad way as well, like the way the story ended up going, but in the end it wrapped up nicely, and yeah, I don't even know exactly what to say. I want to say that you should definitely read it and figure out for yourself, because again, it wasn't what I was expecting, so it's hard to explain it. So yeah, even though I only gave this a 3, I would still recommend it because overall it was nice. It just wasn't one of my favorite books. The next book that I read was The Only Romance, and I'm not really a romance reader, but I actually really, really enjoyed this one. And this one was also sent to me for review back in 2016, so whoops again. But I did get around to it finally, and if I wasn't in just a rough place back in the last 2 years, I would have wished that I read it then, but I didn't. But I got to it now, and I'm very glad I did, and that is Falling by Jane Green, as you've already probably been able to read as I've been holding it up here. Obviously it says it's a love story, and it was good. For a romance, it was typical, it's what I was expecting, but at the same time I did enjoy it. It was nice to get out of that thriller, like almost a depressing mood to read this. There were things I wasn't expecting in this one. I was a little bored with it at first because I'm like, romance, stupid, it's kind of cliche, but it ended up turning around and being a good novel. So I gave this 4 stars, which is pretty high for a romance novel for me, so I definitely would recommend it if you're into that. And it's not really a long book, and it goes by really quickly because it is a feel-good kind of book. So yeah, Falling. And after those books, I had picked those out of my TBR jar and everything, and I was finished. So I was like, I guess I need more books to read, because that was 2 weeks ago. So I picked another book out of my TBR jar. I picked 2 more actually, but one before the other. And so the next book I read was Secrets to the Grave by Tammy Hogue, I think. I picked this up, it was a thrift book I got at Goodwill, and it just sounded interesting to me. It's a mystery with detectives and stuff, and I'm very, very picky with detective novels, but I did really like this one. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and most of that is because this is actually a sequel to another book. So there were things that I feel like I would have enjoyed more having read the first book, and having followed the characters through that journey into this one. But looking at this mystery by itself without taking any information from the other book, it was really good. I wasn't expecting it. It deals with a woman who was brutally murdered and leaves behind a 4-year-old daughter who witnessed the crime, and they're kind of just like hoping that she can help them figure out what happened to her mom and why she was murdered. So I would recommend this, but I would probably read the first book first, as you should, which is called Deeper Than the Dead, and I am going to try to find and pick it up, probably just on Book Outlet or something. I don't want to pay full price for it, and see if I enjoy the first book and if it ties up any issues that I had with not knowing things that appeared in this. So this series is actually pretty good, and I would recommend it, especially if you're into a more criminal murder mystery kind of book instead of a thriller. The other TBR book, or TBR jar book that I picked was The Roanoke Girls by Amy Engel. I won this in a giveaway, and I went into this not knowing much about it. I was pretty sure it was a thriller, and I would still call it a thriller mystery, and I think it's actually more YA, but the topic is a little more adult. But this is about a girl named Lane Roanoke, who her mother dies when she's 15. She goes to live with her grandparents and her cousin Allegra, which I don't like that name because it's a medicine, but the book itself was really good. I flew through it. It was easy to read, well done. Twist that I wasn't expecting, and I gave this probably a 4 out of 5. It wasn't one of my favorite books. I guess that's the best way I can explain why I gave it a 4 out of 5. But definitely interesting, definitely something different I was not expecting. And so if you're looking for a thriller that's just not the typical girl goes missing, but has something that you don't see all the time, go ahead and pick this up, because it's very short too. It's not even 300 pages, so you'll be able to get through it really quickly. And then the last book that I read in July, which I'm going to just throw in here even though it'll be in my Booktubeathon TBR wrap-up, didn't mean to say TBR, Booktubeathon wrap-up, is First to Die by James Patterson. This was the book that I read for the first book, Coin Flip, and actually something I'd like to do. And this is a reread for me. It's a 5 out of 5. I love this series so much, but there's a few of the books that are new in the series that I need to get to, so I thought I would just reread and enjoy the experience all over again. And rereading this book, there were things that I forgot about, which was awesome. That means I haven't read it in so long that I forgot things. But the general premise is Lindsay Boxer is our main character. She is a detective, and she is investigating serial killings of newlyweds. And this is part of the Women's Murder Club series, so as you will know, there's a Women's Murder Club that is formed in this book, and it has friendship and thrills and mystery and twists and turns, and definitely a wonderful book, and you should totally pick it up. And James Patterson is a really good writer, and it's so quick to read. This is one of the longer books that I read this month, and I was able to get it done in a couple hours, so yeah. So those are all the books that I read this month, or last month, July, and one in June. And I would definitely recommend almost all of them. I didn't have any really low rated ones, even they were just average or better than average. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and keep to what, I don't even know, what is English? What is the word I want to use? Keep a lookout, maybe, on my channel for my TBR for August and my Booktubeathon wrap-up. That should be here next week. So, thank you guys again, even though I said thank you already, and I'm gonna have Bam Bam say goodbye with me. Say bye, Bam. See you guys. Thanks for watching.